In a world where people rush past strangers without a second glance, where silence is mistaken for absence, one man chose to stop and truly see someone. He didn't want to stop, but yet something made him stop. And in that single moment of compassion, he would discover that kindness doesn't just change lives, it transforms them completely. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Terminal C was absolute chaos. Warren Mitchell pushed through the crowded corridor, his carry-on slung over one shoulder, his eyes burning from 3 days of minimal sleep and maximum stress. He checked his phone, 4:47 p.m. His flight boarded in 12 minutes. He'd promised Piper he'd be home by dinner. She'd made him pinky swear before he left for San Francisco, her small hands moving in careful signs. "Promise, Daddy? You'll be home for mac and cheese night?" The San Francisco trip had been a disaster. 3 grueling days pitching his architectural designs to investors who smiled politely and said they'd be in touch, which everyone knew meant no. Warren navigated past a coffee kiosk, dodging a businessman who nearly collided with him while typing furiously on his phone. Nobody made eye contact. Everyone moved in their own bubble of urgency, absorbed in their own worlds, their own problems, their own destinations. That's when he saw her. An elderly woman sat alone near gate C-17, elegant in a cream designer coat, her silver hair styled in a way that suggested both wealth and careful attention to appearance. But her eyes told a different story. Confusion, distress, mounting panic. People streamed past her like water around a stone. She was trying to get someone's attention, her hands moving in deliberate, unmistakable signs, sign language. She was asking for help, but nobody stopped. A young woman in yoga pants walked by, eyes glued to her phone. A family with luggage carts rolled past without a glance. A gate agent hurried by, too focused on his clipboard to notice. Warren's steps slowed. He should keep walking. His gate was on the other side of the terminal. He had 11 minutes now. If he stopped, he might miss his flight, miss dinner with Piper, break his promise. The elderly woman's hands moved again, more urgent now. Her eyes scanned the crowd desperately, searching for anyone who might understand, anyone who might see her. Warren stopped walking. He turned and approached her carefully, not wanting to startle her. When he was close enough, he set down his carry-on and signed clearly, his hands steady and practiced. "Hello, I see you need help. I can assist you." The transformation on her face was instant and overwhelming. Relief flooded her features, and her eyes, those frightened, desperate eyes, suddenly brimmed with tears. Her hands flew up, signing rapidly, the movements sharp with emotion. "Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. I thought no one could understand me. My flight, they changed the gate. I heard the announcement, but I can't." Warren sat down beside her, his own flight temporarily forgotten. He signed back, his movements calm and reassuring. "It's okay. Take a breath. I'm here. My name is Warren. What's your name?"
"Beatrice," she signed, her hands trembling slightly. "Beatrice Fenwick. I'm trying to get to Boston. My daughter was supposed to meet me here, but her phone isn't working, and they changed the gate, and I don't understand where I'm supposed to go, and everyone just keeps—" Her hands faltered. She looked down at them, and Warren saw something break in her expression. That particular kind of exhaustion that comes from feeling invisible in a crowd of people. "Everyone just keeps walking past," Warren signed gently, finishing her thought. She nodded, a tear sliding down her cheek. Warren felt something twist in his chest, a familiar ache. He knew this feeling, had watched it happen to someone he loved more than anything in the world. 3 years ago, his wife had called their daughter a burden and walked out of their lives. Piper had been 3 years old, profoundly deaf since birth, and the most extraordinary little person Warren had ever known. But his wife hadn't been able to see that. She'd seen only the challenges, the difference, the ways she didn't fit into the hearing world she'd expected. So Warren had become Piper's bridge. He'd thrown himself into learning American Sign Language, starting with clumsy alphabet fingerspelling and YouTube tutorials, progressing to fluent conversations and deep immersion in deaf culture. He had attended workshops, made friends in the deaf community, learned that silence wasn't emptiness, it was simply a different way of being full.
And he'd watched over and over as the hearing world treated his beautiful, brilliant 6-year-old daughter like she was invisible, like her voice didn't matter because it came from her hands instead of her mouth. "Beatrice," Warren signed, pulling himself back to the present, "let me help you. Tell me about your flight." She wiped her eyes, composing herself. "Boston, flight 2847. It was supposed to leave from this gate, C-17, but they made an announcement and changed it. I couldn't hear it clearly. I tried to ask someone, but—" She gestured at the rushing crowd around them. Warren pulled out his phone and quickly checked the flight information. "Okay, I found it. They moved it to gate B-22. Boarding time was moved up. They're actually boarding now." Beatrice's face went pale. "Now? But that's— How will I—" "I'll take you there," Warren signed. "Come on, we'll make it." He helped her gather her belongings, a leather carry-on, a designer purse, a coat that had slipped off the seat beside her. Then he took her elbow gently, and they started walking, Warren navigating through the crowd while keeping his other hand free to sign. "How long have you been sitting there?" he asked as they moved. "Almost 30 minutes, she signed back. "I kept hoping my daughter would call back or that someone would notice I needed help. But everyone was so busy. I felt like a ghost." "You're not a ghost," Warren signed firmly. "You're here, you're real, and you deserve to be seen." They reached a moving walkway and stepped on. Beatrice's hands were shaking less now, her breathing steadier. She looked at Warren with something like wonder. "Why do you know sign language?" she asked. "If you don't mind me asking." Warren's throat tightened. "I have a daughter, Piper. She's 6. She was born deaf." Understanding bloomed across Beatrice's face, followed by something deeper. Recognition, perhaps. Or kinship. "Then you know," she signed. "You know what it's like. To be treated like you're not quite there." "I've seen it happen to her," Warren signed, his jaw clenching. "Because she's the most amazing kid I've ever known. She's smart and funny and creative, and she sees the world in ways that make me wish I'd been born deaf so I could have seen it that way from the beginning. But people look right through her, like her silence makes her less somehow, like she's background noise in a hearing world." They stepped off the moving walkway and turned down another corridor. Gate B-22 was visible in the distance now, and Warren could see people lined up to board. "You're a good father," Beatrice signed, her eyes soft. "I try to be. I just wish more people understood. Silence isn't emptiness. It's not absence. It speaks volumes if you bother to listen." They reached gate B-22 just as a gate agent announced the final boarding call. Warren checked Beatrice's boarding pass and confirmed she was in the right place. "Thank you," Beatrice signed, grabbing both his hands. "Thank you for seeing me, for stopping. Most people—" Her voice, if you could call signed words a voice, broke. "Most people look right through me. Like I'm furniture. Like I'm nothing." "You're not nothing," Warren signed fiercely. "You're someone's mother, someone's friend, someone who matters. Don't let the world's cruelty make you forget that." Beatrice nodded, then reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. She pressed it into his palm with both hands, holding his gaze intently. Warren glanced down at it. Elegant embossed lettering. Beatrice Fenwick, mother of Elise Fenwick, CEO, Fenwick and Crane Architectural Design Firm. His breath caught. Fenwick and Crane. He knew that name. Every architect on the West Coast knew that name. One of the most prestigious architectural firms on the East Coast, known for innovative designs that pushed boundaries while maintaining stunning aesthetic integrity. He looked up at Beatrice in shock, but she was already signing again. "My daughter. She needs to know about this. About you. Please call her. Tell her you helped me. She'll want to thank you properly."
Beatrice, I don't need— Please, she interrupted, her hands emphatic. For me. She'll want to know. And— She paused, her expression turning thoughtful. My daughter, she understands what it means to see people. She grew up with a deaf mother. She built her entire company around the idea that the world should be built for everyone, not just the majority. The gate agent called Beatrice's boarding group. She squeezed Warren's hand one more time, signed, "Thank you," with a depth of emotion that transcended language, and disappeared down the jetway.
Warren stood there, the business card in his hand, as his own final boarding call crackled over the intercom. He ran. He made his flight with 90 seconds to spare, sliding into his seat as the flight attendants were doing their final checks. His heart pounded, adrenaline singing through his veins, and he kept looking at the business card in his hand like it might disappear. Elise Fenwick, CEO of Fenwick & Crane. During the 2-hour flight home, Warren couldn't stop thinking about it. He'd helped an elderly woman find her gate, a simple act of human decency that shouldn't have been remarkable but apparently was. And now he had a direct connection to one of the most influential architectural firms in the country. But that wasn't what stuck with him. What stuck was the look in Beatrice's eyes when she'd signed, "Everyone just keeps walking past." That hollowness, that resignation, the specific pain of being invisible not because you weren't there, but because people chose not to see you. He thought about Piper, about the time they'd been at the grocery store and she'd tried to ask a clerk where the pasta was, signing politely, and the clerk had looked right past her and asked Warren, "What does she want?" as if Piper wasn't standing right there, as if her question didn't matter because she asked it with her hands. The rage he'd felt in that moment had been quite hot and immediate, but he'd swallowed it, smiled tightly, and responded for Piper, while she stood there, her little shoulders slumped, learning the painful lesson that the world wouldn't always see her.
Now 30,000 feet above the ground, Warren looked at Beatrice's business card and made a decision. He'd call, not because he wanted something from Elise Fenwick, though God knew his firm could use the help, but because Beatrice had asked him to, because she'd seen something in that moment between them that mattered, and because maybe, just maybe, there were more people in the world who understood what it meant to truly see someone. Warren's apartment was small but warm, filled with the evidence of single parenthood, Piper's drawings covering the fridge, picture books stacked on the coffee table, a basket of laundry waiting to be folded. When he walked in at 6:15 p.m., exactly on time for mac and cheese night, Piper launched herself at him from the couch. Her small arms wrapped around his waist, and she pulled back to sign rapidly, "You're home! You kept your promise! I missed you so much!" Warren crouched down to her level, signing back, "I missed you too, baby girl. More than you know. How was school?" They talked while Warren made dinner, Piper's hands flying as she told him about her art project, about how her friend Maya had shared her cookies at lunch, about how she'd learned a new sign for butterfly, and could he please watch her do it? He watched. He signed back. He listened with his eyes the way she'd taught him to listen, and his heart filled with the kind of love that made everything else, the failed investor meetings, the struggling business, the exhaustion, fade into background noise. After dinner, while Piper colored at the kitchen table, Warren pulled out Beatrice's business card and stared at it. "What's that?" Piper signed, looking up from her drawing. Warren explained about the woman at the airport, about helping her find her gate, about how she'd been deaf and scared and everyone had ignored her. Piper's face grew serious. She set down her crown and signed, "Like how people ignore me sometimes?" Warren's chest constricted. "Yeah, sweetheart. Like that." "But you stopped. You helped her. That's because you're a good daddy. You see people." "I learned from the best," Warren signed back, touching her nose gently. She giggled, then asked, "Are you going to call the lady's daughter?" "I don't know," Warren admitted. "Should I?" Piper thought about it, her little face scrunched up in concentration. Then she signed with the confidence of someone 3 times her age. "Yes. Because maybe the daughter needs to know there are good people, like you need to know I'm proud of you." Sometimes, Warren thought, 6-year-olds were wiser than the whole rest of the world combined. 3 days later, his phone rang with a Boston area code.
Warren was at his drafting table, working on a design that felt uninspired and flat when the call came through. He almost didn't answer. But something, instinct, curiosity, fate, made him pick up. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Elise Fenwick. I believe you helped my mother at the Seattle airport." "I did. Did she make it home okay?" "She did, thanks to you." There was a pause, and when Elise spoke again, her voice had softened. "Mr. Mitchell, my mother told me what you did, what you said to her, about silence speaking volumes, about your daughter." Warren waited, his heart beating faster.
"I grew up with a deaf mother," Elise continued. "I've spent my entire life watching people treat her like she's invisible, like she's somehow less because she experiences the world differently. And I've spent my career trying to change that, trying to build a world that works for everyone, not just the hearing majority. What you did at that airport, most people don't do that. They just don't." "I just did what anyone should do," Warren said quietly. "But they don't. That's the point." Elise's voice cracked slightly. "My mother came home crying, Mr. Mitchell, not from sadness, from relief, because for the first time in a very long time, someone saw her, really saw her, and didn't look away." Warren's throat tightened. "My mother also mentioned you work in architecture," Elise continued, her tone shifting slightly, more businesslike now, but with warmth still underneath. "I looked you up. Your portfolio is impressive." "Thank you," Warren managed. "I'd like to discuss a potential collaboration. We're starting a new project, a community center specifically designed for accessibility, with a particular focus on the deaf community. When my mother told me about you, about why you know sign language, about your perspective..." She paused. "Mr. Mitchell, I think you might be exactly what this project needs. Would you be willing to fly to Boston to discuss it?" Warren looked around his small office, at the designs that weren't getting him anywhere, at the bills stacked on his desk, at Piper's school photo smiling at him from its frame. "When?" he asked.
2 weeks later, Warren stood in the sleek glass and steel offices of Fenwick and Crane in downtown Boston, his portfolio tucked under his arm, trying not to feel completely out of his depth. The office was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor, modern furniture that probably cost more than his car, art on the walls that looked museum quality. This was success. Real, tangible success, the kind Warren had dreamed about but never quite reached. "Mr. Mitchell." He turned. Elise Fenwick was younger than he'd expected, early 30s, with her mother's elegant bone structure and sharp, intelligent eyes. She wore a tailored navy suit and had her blonde hair pulled back in a way that was both professional and effortlessly stylish. But what struck Warren most was when she smiled and signed. "Welcome, I'm Elise. Thank you for coming." Her signing was fluid, natural, native. Not the careful practice movements of someone who'd learned it as an adult, but the easy grace of someone who'd grown up bilingual. Something in Warren's chest loosened. "Thank you for inviting me," he signed back, then added verbally, "Your office is beautiful." "Thank you. We designed it ourselves, obviously." She grinned. "Can I get you coffee?" "Water." "Coffee would be great." They settled in a conference room with a view of the harbor, and what was supposed to be a 1-hour meeting stretched into 3. Elise spread architectural plans across the table, initial concepts for the community center. "Here's what we have so far," she said, speaking and signing simultaneously with unconscious ease. "But I'm not satisfied with it. It's good, but it's not right." Warren studied the plans. They were good. Excellent, even. Clean lines, smart use of space, all the technical accessibility requirements met. But Elise was right. Something was missing. "Can I?" he asked, gesturing to a pencil. "Please."
For the next hour, they worked together. Warren sketching modifications, Elise adding her own ideas, both of them falling into an easy collaboration that felt less like a job interview and more like two people who spoke the same language, discovering they could create poetry together. "Here," Warren said, pointing to the main gathering space, "this is designed for hearing people with deaf accommodations added. But what if we flipped it? What if we designed it from the beginning for ASL conversation?" "What do you mean?" "Sign language requires sight lines. If you can't see someone's hands, you can't understand them. So gathering spaces for deaf communities need different configurations. Circular or semicircular seating instead of rows, different lighting, Bright enough to see signs clearly, but not harsh. No backlighting that creates silhouettes, and color contrast on the walls so hands are always visible against the background. Elise leaned forward, her eyes bright. Keep going. And sound dampening doesn't matter the same way, so we can use that budget elsewhere. Maybe tactile elements, different textures that provide information, visual alerts instead of audio ones, but integrated into the design beautifully, not just stuck on as an afterthought. The whole building should say, "You belong here," instead of "We made room for you." Yes, Elise breathed. That's what I've been trying to articulate but couldn't figure out how to achieve. They looked at each other across the table, and something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, the peculiar intimacy of being understood by someone who truly gets it. Most hearing architects, Elise signed, switching fully to ASL. Designed for hearing people and then modify for others. They treat accessibility like a checklist, a box to tick. But I want to create spaces that start from a different premise, that understand silence isn't emptiness, it's just a different way of being full. Warren felt something catch in his throat. Those were almost the exact words he'd used with Beatrice at the airport.
That's what I've been trying to do, he signed back. When I design now, I think about how Piper experiences space, what she needs, what would make her feel not just accommodated, but celebrated. Tell me about her, Elise said gently. So he did. He told her about Piper's diagnosis at 6 months old, about his wife leaving, unable to handle what she saw as a burden, the YouTube videos he'd watched to learn how to braid hair, the gluten-free recipes he'd mastered for her celiac disease, the 3 a.m. fears that he wasn't enough. And he told her about the victories, about the first time Piper signed, "I love you, Daddy," completely unprompted. About her starting at a deaf school and thriving, about the way she saw beauty in things he'd never noticed, the pattern of rain on windows, the way tree shadows moved, the whole visual poetry of a world she experienced without sound. She sounds extraordinary, Elise signed. She is, Warren replied simply. Elise was quiet for a moment, then, "My mother is extraordinary too. But she spent her whole life fighting to be seen. I built this company because I was tired of watching her have to fight. I wanted to create spaces where people like her, people like your Piper, didn't have to fight to exist, where the world was built for them from the beginning." "That's beautiful," Warren said. "It's business," Elise replied with a slight smile. "Accessible design is good design. It benefits everyone. But yes, it's also personal. Everything I build is for my mother. Everything." They talked until the sun started setting over the harbor, painting the water in shades of orange and gold. They talked about design philosophy and childhood memories, about the deaf community and the ways the hearing world failed it, about dreams and frustrations and the persistent hope that change was possible. When Warren finally left, promising to send detailed design revisions within the week, Elise walked him to the elevator. "This was supposed to be a consultation," she said, smiling. "I think it turned into something else." "A collaboration?" Warren asked. "A partnership," Elise corrected. "If you're interested." "I'm very interested," Warren said, and meant it in more ways than one. Over the next 3 months, Warren flew to Boston bi-weekly. During those times, Piper stayed with Mrs. Grace, who was not just a neighbor, but was more like a grandmother to Piper and a mother to him. The community center project became his primary focus, and Fenwick and Crane paid him better than he'd ever been paid in his life. But money wasn't why he kept coming back. Between meetings, he and Elise talked. Long conversations over working dinners, discussions that wandered from architecture to philosophy to personal history. He learned that she'd spent her childhood translating the hearing world for her mother, that she'd chosen architecture specifically because she wanted to design a better world, that she carried the weight of responsibility for her mother's happiness like Atlas carried the sky.
She learned that Warren measured time differently now, not in hours and days, but in small victories. A ponytail braided successfully. A bedtime story that actually ended in sleep. A moment when Piper's face lit up with joy over something simple and perfect. And every few days, Warren would video call Piper from his Boston hotel room, and she'd tell him about her day in rapid signs. And increasingly, Elise would appear in the frame beside him. It started casually, Elise stopping by his hotel to drop off revised plans, staying to say hi to Piper. But it became routine. Piper started asking, "Is Elise there?" before Warren even connected the call. One evening, Elise sent Piper a package. Inside was a custom coloring book, architectural drawings of the community center, simplified for a child to color, with a note, "Help me design the playground." Piper's response was immediate and emphatic, a series of drawings showing swings and slides and climbing structures, all with sightlines carefully considered, all with visual interest and bright colors. "She's brilliant," Elise signed to Warren during their next meeting, Piper's drawings spread across the conference table. "I'm not. Look, her idea about the circular slide with windows cut into it, that's genius. It creates a visual element for kids watching from outside, while the kid inside gets a fun perspective. We're incorporating it." Warren looked at the drawings, at his daughter's careful work being taken seriously by one of the best architectural firms in the country, and felt something in his chest expand almost painfully. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for seeing her." "Thank you for seeing my mother," Elise replied, "for seeing all of us."
That night, after a long day of design work, Elise invited Warren to dinner at her home, a brownstone in Back Bay that was somehow both elegant and warm, filled with books and art and the comfortable clutter of real life. Beatrice was there, and when she saw Warren, she signed enthusiastically. "The kind man from the airport, I've heard so much about your work." Over a meal that Beatrice insisted on preparing, Warren watched the two women interact. The easy shorthand of their signs, the way Elise anticipated her mother's needs without hovering, and the obvious deep love between them. It reminded him of his relationship with Piper, and something in his heart recognized home. After dinner, Beatrice excused herself to bed, and Elise led Warren out to a small balcony overlooking the street. "Your mother is wonderful," Warren said. "She is, and she asks about you constantly. When is Warren coming back? Has he finished the playground designs? What does his daughter think of the project?" Elise smiled. "I think you made a profound impression on her, on both of us." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the city lights twinkling around them. "Can I tell you something?" Elise asked, her voice softer now. "Of course. After my mother came home from that trip, after she told me what you did, how you stopped, how you saw her, she said something I haven't been able to forget. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the streetlights. That man sees people, really sees them. I didn't understand what she meant until I met you, until I watched you talk about Piper and work on these designs and care so deeply about creating spaces where people feel seen." Warren's heart was beating faster now. "I see you too," he said quietly. "I see someone who built an empire on the principle that everyone deserves dignity, someone who speaks her mother's language as naturally as her own, someone who understands that accessibility isn't accommodation, it's respect." "Warren, I see someone I can't stop thinking about," he continued. "Someone I fly across the country to see every 2 weeks, and it stopped being just about the project a long time ago." Elise stepped closer. "When did it stop being just about the project?" "I think it stopped being just about the project the moment you greeted me in sign language and I realized I wasn't alone anymore, that there was someone else who understood." The kiss was soft, tentative, full of questions and promises. When they pulled apart, Elise was smiling. "I think," she said, "we should probably tell Piper." Warren laughed. "I think Piper already knows." A month later, Warren brought Piper to Boston during her spring break. She was nervous,
He could tell by the way her hands fidgeted, signing random words to herself as they walked through the airport. "What if she doesn't like me?" she signed in the taxi to Elise's office. "She already likes you," Warren assured her. "You've been video chatting for months." "That's different. That's through a screen. What if I'm weird in person?" "You're not weird. You're extraordinary." "Dad," Piper signed with the exasperation only a 6-year-old could muster. "Everyone's parent thinks they're extraordinary." When they arrived at Fenwick and Crane, Elise was waiting in the lobby. She crouched down to Piper's level and signed. "Hi, Piper. I'm so happy to finally meet you in person. Your playground designs are being built right now. Want to come see?" Piper looked at Warren for permission. He nodded. She turned back to Elise and signed shyly. "Okay."
They spent the afternoon at the construction site, Piper wearing a tiny hard hat that Elise had custom ordered for her, watching as workers build the structures she'd helped design. Every few minutes, Piper would tug on Warren's hand and sign, "Dad, look, that's my idea. They're really building it." Later, at dinner, Piper sat between Warren and Elise, signing animatedly about her school and her friends and the new book she was reading. Beatrice watched from across the table, her eyes warm, occasionally adding comments that made Piper giggle. As they were leaving, Piper tugged on Elise's sleeve. When Elise looked down, Piper signed carefully. "Are you my dad's special friend?" Warren felt his face heat, but Elise just smiled and signed back, "I'd like to be, if that's okay with you." Piper considered this seriously. Then she signed, "Can you be my special friend too?" "I would love that," Elise replied. Piper nodded, satisfied, then added, "Good, because my dad smiles a lot more when he talks about you, and he needs to smile more." Out of the mouths of babes, Warren thought, as Elise reached over and squeezed his hand. 6 months after that November day at the airport, Warren stood in the completed community center with Piper's hand in his, Elise beside him, and Beatrice sitting in the front row. The building was extraordinary, all light and space and thoughtful design, every element carefully considered for the people who would use it. The main gathering space had the circular configuration they designed, with perfect sightlines and beautiful color contrast. The playground, Piper's playground, featured the circular slide with windows, bright colors, and spaces designed for both deaf and hearing children to play together. The dedication ceremony was conducted in both ASL and English, the interpreters working seamlessly, the audience a beautiful mix of deaf and hearing community members, all finding space in a building designed with love. When it was Warren's turn to speak, he stood at the podium and signed. 6 months ago, I was running through an airport, late and exhausted, when I saw someone who needed help. I almost kept walking. I had every excuse to keep walking, but something made me stop. He paused, looking at Beatrice.
That decision, to stop, to see someone everyone else was ignoring, changed my life completely. It brought me here, to this building, to this community, to this family. He gestured to Elise and Piper. My daughter taught me that silence speaks volumes, that being deaf isn't a deficit, it's a difference, a beautiful, valuable difference. And she taught me that love is the best teacher, that if you love someone, you learn their language, all of it, the signs and the unspoken parts, the visible and the invisible. Piper signed from her seat, "Dad, you're getting mushy." The audience laughed, those who knew sign language translating for those who didn't, the room filling with shared warmth. "The point is," Warren continued, "we built this center on a simple principle. Everyone deserves to be seen, to be heard, or in this case, to be seen when they speak with their hands. To belong not as an accommodation, but as the design itself. And I'm grateful to everyone who made this possible, but especially to Beatrice for trusting a stranger at an airport, and to Elise for teaching me that the best love stories are written in languages most people never bother to learn." After the ceremony, as the community explored their new center, Elise squeezed Warren's hand and signed, "Thank you for seeing my mother, for seeing all of us." Warren signed back, "Thank you for teaching me that the best love stories are written in languages most people never bother to learn." Piper appeared between them, tugging both their hands. She signed, "Can we go see my room?"
"Your room?" Elise asked, confused. "The kids' design room. You said I could have a space there whenever we visit Boston." Elise and Warren exchanged a look, warm, full of understanding, full of promise. "Come on," Elise signed, taking Piper's other hand. "Let's go see your room." As they walked through the center, behind them, Beatrice watching from her seat with tears in her eyes, Warren thought about time, how he used to measure it in small victories, braided ponytails, and bedtime stories, how he now measured it differently.
In the moment he chose to stop in an airport, in the language he'd learned for love, in the spaces they built, not just with blueprints and building materials, but with compassion and understanding and the radical act of truly seeing another human being. The best things in life, Warren had learned, came from the moments when you chose to stop rushing, when you chose to see someone everyone else ignored, when you chose to sign hello to a stranger and discovered you were signing hello to your future. This story reminds us that kindness isn't just a virtue, it's a language. And sometimes the smallest gesture of seeing someone, truly seeing them, can transform not just their life, but yours. If this story touched you, if it reminded you to slow down and notice the people the world rushes past, subscribe to Everbell's Stories for more journeys that prove love speaks every language. And remember, in a world that encourages us to keep walking, be the person who stops, who sees, who signs hello to someone everyone else ignores. You never know what beautiful future you might be building. Drop a comment sharing a time someone truly saw you, or when you chose to see someone else. Let's celebrate the language of kindness together, one story at a time.